And the one we're going to do today is the server flow. And the way you ask for it, you would think it's server, but it's not. It's response type code. Glorious. Anyway, again, fully documented in the API. You just kind of go and look at it, and it'll make perfect sense. Okay, now we have to tell him, hi, I'm Matt's accountant. Okay, that part. Well, that part is client. Hey, typing, how does it work? Live demos, right? It's exciting. That's very refreshing. Just and see what happens. Oh, of course, the wireless stopped working. Yay. Okay, just a second, guys. Dev Fest 2013. Fortunately, I think we might have lost a couple of changes here, but we're going to do them right away. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, see? Lots of moving parts in this demo, like Cloud9 can fail, wireless can fail, App Engine can fail, my laptop can fail, and I can fail. So hey, it's going to work well. Let's do this again. Right, so we should save more often, right? See, you learned something today. Save often. Okay, we had accounts google.com/o auth to auth, right? And then we already said we want to do the server flow, so response type code. And what we were doing now is we were adding who we are. And that's something called client ID. So the way this works is each application that wants to use OAuth to talk to Google services needs to register. But this is not as horrible as it sounds. You don't have to fill a paper form and send it by mail or anything crazy like that. All you have to do is you go to something called Google API Console, and if you look at API Access, there is a button here to create client IDs. And when you do this, it will ask you, can you see? Yeah, I think it's fine, right? It'll ask you what kind of application are you? Are you a web application, a native application? What are you building? And what's your website, and so on. So I've already done this, and we have a client ID here. The client ID looks something like this. It's ugly, right? There's also something here called a client secret. And, sorry, not that one, this one. And this is essentially something like a password, right? It's the server equivalent of a user's password, right? So we're going to take our client ID. Let's just put this in here. Great. So we told the server who we are, right? What do you think? Should we also put the client secret to say, no, really, we are the server?
This is our first connection, so we have to.
Okay, you think you have to? Somebody else? Can I get a no?
No.
No, absolutely not. And the reason why not, yes, we should, like logically you think that yes, we should tell them who you, like prove that we are this client. But actually, what's going on here? We're not talking to Google directly. We are actually sending the user to this URL. So this URL is going to the user's browser. And remember, the client secret is just like it sounds, secret. So you should actually keep it from the user. Nobody should know this except your application. So unfortunately, at this point, we can't prove to Google that we really are this client, but we claim to be, right? Okay, fair enough. So we're this guy. Okay. The next question is, well, so what do you want? Yeah. Okay, you're his accountant. What do you want? Well, what we want is to access the user's calendar. And the way this works is in OAuth, and actually in a lot of Google APIs, you have a concept of scopes. And scopes are basically, let's say, they identify a part of the user's data and some rights on top of it, right? So, for instance, you have a scope for reading the calendar, for writing the calendar. You have a different scope for reading email. You have a different scope for finding out the user's birthday, right? There's all kinds of these scopes, right? So the one we're looking for is we want to modify the user's calendar. And scopes are kind of like XML namespaces. They look like URLs, but you're not supposed to go there. Like it's not It's not something you want to access and try to see what's on that page. I mean, you could try, I'm guessing it's nothing interesting, but they're just like an identifier, like XML namespaces. So the one for, we have to encode this because it's already, we're already doing this in a URL, so we need to encode this other URL. And the scope for this one is googleapis.com/auth/calendar. This is actually pretty easy to remember because they're all like this. Okay, not all, but most of them are googleapis.com/auth/something. And the something is usually what you want. There's a couple of exceptions. Gmail looks a bit different, but anyway. Okay, so we say, hi Google, we're these guys, we want access to the calendar. What else? Well, this is a more interesting parameter. It's called access type. And let's go a bit into this one. So, what you have to understand is once the user gives us consent, this is permanent, right? So there is no, this is not temporary. Once the user said, hey, I'm okay with this application accessing my calendar, until the user explicitly goes to his account and says, I revoke this access, which he can do at any time, so you shouldn't rely that the user hasn't done this, you will continue to have access to his calendar, right? Well, that's kind of good, depending on what you want to do. But there's two ways of this to be permanent. The question is, can you do this even if the user is not using your application? So let's say you have a batch job in the middle of the night, right? You have a batch job running in the middle of the night. Can it go through all of your users' calendars and kind of update them? If the user stops using your application for like 6 months, he's not used your website for 6 months, can you still go to his calendar and make changes? That's a question, and you get to decide whether you want yes or no. And the two modes are called online and offline. Offline means even if the user is offline, like he doesn't access your application, you can still get this permission. Or online means, no, I can only access his calendar while he's using my application. Right, so we're going to use online. Oh, by the way, this is what you saw earlier in the OAuth playground, right? When we looked at this. And we say we want to access something, right? It says, perform these operations when I'm not using the application. That means the application is asking for offline access. If we don't ask for this, this line won't appear. And the interesting thing is we've done studies on this, and there is an actual, so the more lines show up here when you request your OAuth consent, the less likely it is that the user will say yes. Keep that in mind when you're developing your application. So don't go ahead and ask, oh, can I see your calendar, your email, do this whenever, and so on and so forth, because the more things you ask, the more likely the user will say, no, you may not, right? So we're going to use online, not because it necessarily makes more sense for us, but because it's a lot simpler to use. With online access, all you have to do to continue to get access to the user's calendar is exactly the same thing you've done the first time. So the second time we will ask for the same permission, it will just be automatically approved without any confirmation prompt to the user. So it's very easy to do the online approach. The offline approach, you get a certain token that you have to remember and keep securely and so on. It's more complicated. So let's just do this one. Okay, there's more. Okay, so we told Google, this is what we want, this is who we are, we want to do this while the user is actually accessing our application. What are we doing here? We're redirecting the user to Google. Okay, the user clicks OK or not OK. What happens then? Well, the user needs to come back to our site, right? We didn't just send the user to Google to stay there. We want him to come back to our site. And so for that, we need to give Google a URL to send the user back to, right? So this is in a little parameter called redirect URI. Sorry, URL and code. And I'm just going to hard code this here to make it simple. Normally you do something smarter here, like to look at what your host name is and so on, but the address that we want to go to is nomadicdrummer.apps, no, sorry, -a apps.com, calendar auth to callback. Right? And what you have to keep in mind here is that this URL is actually pretty important for security. You couldn't, if Google allowed you to put any URL here, people could kind of abuse this, right? You could send people to Google and then redirect them to their application and things like that. So to fix that, you have to register this URL when you create your client ID. So you have to say, this is where I will ask you to redirect my users. I have 2 of them registered here because I also have a backup app, just in case something crazy happened. So the -b is exactly the same app, but backup version of it. But essentially, you would list any URL that you want called back here, right? So we did this, and there's only one more parameter, just one more thing, right? Just one more thing. So the user comes back to us, right? He comes back to us in this URL, and we can tell who the user is because we just look at cookies and we can easily tell who he is. But the question is, how can we tell which calendar he was trying to add? Right? Because we want to continue and go ahead and add that calendar, but how can we tell what was the calendar? Now, one idea would be we could go ahead and put this in our, like somewhere in our data store, just save it in the user profile, and that would kind of work, but now imagine that, okay, now you have 2, like the user has 2 tabs open, and he kind of goes through this process in parallel in both of them, then we're going to get mixed up. I mean, again, you could solve all of these issues, but it's a lot simpler to just use something that the API provides, which is a little parameter called state. Sorry, is there a question or no? In this parameter, you can just put anything you want, and Google will send this back to you when it's redirected, right? So in our case, we just want to put the concert ID in here. We put the concert ID in here, and that means when we get the callback, we'll know what we were trying to do. Whew, okay, we've built this. I promise this is the most complicated part of the whole process. So now we need to actually redirect the user to this, and this syntax might be kind of unfamiliar if you have not used Jersey before, but it doesn't matter. It's just basically a redirect URL string, right, rebuilt. And it no longer returns a string, it returns a response. Again, if this makes absolutely no sense, it doesn't matter. It's simply a redirect. We're just saying, send the user to this location instead. Okay. Right, so we send the user to this location. Okay, I should save because you never know. Right, there you go. You send the user to this location, and he's going to come back eventually. So when he comes back, we want to continue working. So let's add another method that will handle the coming back part, right? So this is going to be just a normal get. So it's not a post or anything. Google sends him back just with a normal get. And it'll come to, we said, auth to callback. I don't have to specify /calendar because again, this whole class is only registered in WebXML to handle /calendar. So this is what we get. And this one will actually produce HTML. So this no longer produces HTML. This one does. We just have some sort of auth to callback method, right? And that was weird. I'm not sure what that is. Okay. Maybe I should mute this just in case. Okay, much better. Okay, so user comes back. When the user comes back, Google sends you 2 things on the URL as query parameters. The first one is, well, what we just sent there, the concert ID. So let me pick that one up as a query parameter. We want to look at state, concert ID, right? And the other thing that it sends you is a lot funner. It's a code. Haha, of course. It's a little string that looks like AES2 2 slash whatever, just a random opaque string that basically represents the authorization that the user just gave you, right? So we're going to get this code in a string, and before I go on, let me just copy this. We're going to need the concert again anyway, and we're also going to need to know who the user is. And I have a little user provider that will actually it's get logged in user. Okay, whatever. We're going to need this a bit later, so I don't want to stop at that point. Right, so we got this code from Google that represents the user's authorization. Can we use this to make that API call? No. And the reason we can't is, the rest of it might seem like, wait, that's such a useless complication because, right, we just got the code. Why can't we just put this code in and send it to Google and it should accept it because the user approved it? It's actually it's a bit more complicated than that. The thing is, this code was seen by at least, maybe it could have been seen by at least one person who shouldn't see it. Who do you think that is?
HTTP server?
Which HTTP server? Like yours?
Actually, it's true.
It's yours, so it's fine. You're supposed to see it.
Okay.
Who else? The user. Okay, this might seem really scary. Like, wait, why do we care about the user seeing this code? He already has access to his account because it's his account, right? So why do we care? We do care because this code, or well, if it was the real code, it would allow you to access his account in your name, in your